On Friday night around 9:15, I learned that the Deputy Attorney General's office had directed 2 armed Special Deputy U.S. Marshals to my home to serve me with a letter. The letter was a warning to me about the risks of testifying here today.
Imagine what other kind of intimidation tactics are happening under this current administration. It's extremely alarming.
Hey, it's Jordan. I am in Flint, Michigan, East Palestine, Ohio, Tumwa, Iowa. Please support the only independent outlet on the ground covering what the corporate media covers up.
This is straight up witness intimidation.
On Friday night around 9:15, I learned that the Deputy Attorney General's office had directed the Department's Security and Emergency Planning Service to send 2 armed Special Deputy.
On Monday of this week, at a bicameral hearing chaired by Democrats from the House and Senate, witnesses testified to outrageous abuses of power by the Trump administration. These testimonies were absolutely wild, and we're not hearing much coverage from mainstream media about this at all. But one of the most shocking testimonies was from former DOJ staffer Liz Oyer, who talked about being intimidated as a witness to not speak at this congressional hearing after she was fired by the Assistant Attorney General when asked to reinstate actor Mel Gibson, who's friends with Donald Trump, Trump's buddy, to have his firearms rights restored. Because right now he is restricted from being able to use firearms because of a domestic violence conviction. Now, most Americans agree that those convicted of domestic violence should not have access to firearms. This is not controversial. Yet, Liz Oyer said this is probably not a good idea. And she was fired. After being fired, the DOJ refused to let her know about what next steps were for her health care, what next steps were to file for unemployment. And so she filed a complaint regarding that, and she went public. After going public, she was asked to come to this hearing, and she was intimidated. And I want you guys to hear her story because it really is chilling, and it encompasses the entire hearing, but also this is far beyond normal executive overreach that we've seen in the past. This is straight up witness intimidation. Take a listen.
Perhaps the most personally upsetting part of the story is the lengths to which the leadership of the department has gone to prevent me from testifying here today. On Friday night around 9:15, I learned that the Deputy Attorney General's office had directed the Department's Security and Emergency Planning Service to send 2 armed Special Deputy U.S. Marshals to my home to serve me with a letter. The letter was to be served at my home between 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock on Friday night. I was in the car with my husband and my parents, who are sitting behind me today, when I got the news that the officers were on their way to my house where my teenage child was home alone. Fortunately, due to the grace of a very decent person who understood how upsetting this would be to my family, I was able to confirm receipt of the letter to an email address, and the deputies were called off. The letter had been emailed to me just before 8 o'clock that night. At no point did Mr. Blanche's staff pick up the phone and call me before they sent armed deputies to my home. The letter was a warning to me about the risks of testifying here today. But I am here because I will not be bullied into concealing the ongoing corruption and abuse of power at the Department of Justice. DOJ is entrusted with keeping us safe, upholding the rule of law, and protecting our civil rights. It is not a personal favor bank for the president.
Trump's administration is wielding the Department of Justice for their own aims. And we know we've had a history of this in the past, but this is one of the most outrageous stories we've heard. Now, Liz Oyer was an attorney that worked in the pardons office. She was a lead attorney at the pardons office, meaning that she advises President Trump's team on what types of pardons to give, what reevaluates and evaluates requests for pardons. And she receives this email, this request from the Deputy Attorney General to reinstate Mel Gibson's firearms. She says this is not a great idea. She gets fired. And then after she gets fired, she files a complaint because she can't get information finding out what the hell is going on. She was invited to speak at this hearing. And what happened is they sent her an email at 8 p.m. telling her the consequences that can happen if she speaks at this hearing. And by 9 p.m., armed DOJ officers were already on her way to her house to deliver a letter where she wasn't home and only her teenage daughter was there. This is a warning. It's a chilling effect to send. This is a chilling effect for any whistleblowers who might want to come forward or people who just want to be transparent. This is an assault of transparency on what is going on within the administration, what is going on within our departments that, let me remind you, belong to the people, such as the Department of Justice. Another witness that testified at yesterday's hearing was Ryan Croswell. Now, Ryan Croswell resigned from the Department of Justice in the wake of the agency's decision to drop its corruption charges against New York City Mayor Eric Adams. Croswell had stated that 7 prosecutors quit over the deal Trump struck with Adams, and Adams rolled over like a fish on a line. And what Trump was, as I had mentioned before, pressuring Adams regarding was New York City's sanctuary city status, pressuring him to capitulate to ICE within New York City so that they can have free reign to do whatever they want, basically. So overall, pardoning people to put pressure on them is one of the most corrupt things, and it's commendable that 7 prosecutors, including Croswell, resigned over this. But it's also telling as to what kind of trajectory this administration is heading in. Now, I also want to play you guys a clip from Rachel Cohen. And Rachel Cohen is a former attorney for the firm Scranton Arts. She resigned from Scranton Arts earlier this month or toward the end of last month regarding multiple executive orders that were coming down on a litany of law firms. Many of these law firms were engaged in different legal actions that attempted to hold Trump accountable for on fraud charges, on charges regarding January 6th, and others. Among the agencies that Trump threatened were Covington Burling, Perkins Coie, and Paul Weiss. All of those legal firms were threatened by the Trump administration. Covington and Burling and Perkins Coie were threatened directly in 2 separate executive orders. Perkins Coie's executive order also stated that they would be evaluated for their government contracts based on who they decided to hire within their firm. So if Trump doesn't like somebody that they hire, then he was threatening to strip all of their government contracts or any type of government contracting that they have, and even strip contracts from third-party vendors who would use Paul Weiss or Perkins Coie or Covington Burling for their services. So it's saying if you want a contract for the U.S. government, you don't have the right to choose who your own legal representation is, which is outrageous. Now, Paul Weiss completely rolled over Covington Burling, and Perkins Coie. Paul Weiss agreed to $40 million in pro bono legal services for the Trump administration. Eventually, Rachel Cohen's fears were realized when her own law firm, Scranton Arts, heard that they were being threatened for an executive order to go out about them. But before the executive order was submitted, the law firm rolled over and agreed to $100 million in pro bono in contract work from the administration. Now, this has led to dozens of legal aides and dozens of lawyers and attorneys resigning from these large firms that are rolling over and capitulating to the Trump administration. Let's take a listen to what Rachel Cohen has to say about what type of chilling effect this type of pressure has on these legal firms and people's rights to seek out their own legal representation.
Like calling this hearing, resignation was not my first choice. Throughout this period, associates across the industry were engaged in measured advocacy internally and externally, hoping to get our firms to band together and stand up to the administration's attacks on the broader legal profession. Paul Weiss's capitulation made me realize firm leadership was not motivated to act collectively. 8 days later, on March 28th, when Skadden promised the Trump administration $100 million in pro bono legal services despite no executive order being entered against them. Other associates resigned in protest, 2 of them publicly. They're sitting behind me, and I am so unbelievably grateful.
So these agencies are already rolling over, already doing the bidding, and it's more than a little disturbing. There's one more clip that I'd like you to hear from attorney Rachel Cohen.
I was asked here because my voice is loud, but I came here for the same reason I resigned. It is important for the very real people whose voices are not heard in the same way to have an advocate today and always. This advocacy cannot be defined by fear of future retribution. My students and non-white friends and colleagues deserve brave advocates. Mahmoud Khalil, Rumaiza Ozturk, Kilmar Armando Abrego Garcia, and Andre Jose Hernandez Romero deserve brave advocates. People seeking abortion care or birth control or gender-affirming care deserve brave advocates. And to be clear, everyone else, the law firm partners enabling this slide into autocracy, the voters who put Trump into office and are waiting and will wait forever for him to care about the difficulties that they face. Those of us in this room today, we all deserve brave advocates. The administration cannot pick and choose who gets representation. It cannot use executive power to scare lawyers out of advocacy. If we allow any president to dictate who deserves a lawyer, our legal system fails. Like firm leaders, I am afraid of where this intimidation campaign leads. But unlike most of them, I will not allow my fear to manifest as silence. I choose courage.
The people that Rachel Cohen mentions in her closing statements, Mahmoud Khalil, Rumaiza Ozturk, the hundreds and hundreds of student visa and green card holders on campuses across the countries are losing their rights. Colleges are capitulating. Law firms are rolling over. If people don't even have the right to legal counsel, which was already difficult due to financial restraints people had to garner that legal representation. But if the Trump administration is threatening legal agencies to revoke contracts for people with government contracts who are utilizing services from those specific agencies or those specific law firms, that could send a chilling effect. That could create an environment where we have people that are too afraid to represent someone like Kilmar Abrego Garcia. If you guys don't know the story of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, he was removed from the country along with many other individuals, hundreds of individuals who are accused of being members of the Tren de Aragua gang without any due process, shipped to an El Salvadorian prison that has a history in human rights violations and a history of torture and prison slave labor. He was literally sent to a prison slave labor camp. It turns out the Trump administration is like, oh, oops, we accidentally deported this guy. He has an autistic son. He has a family here in the United States. He had legal status in the United States. But yet now the Trump administration is claiming that they cannot bring this man home, or that they refuse to bring this man home because, according to them, now there is no jurisdiction. So they can just send people off to this prison with no legal process and then claim to us that there is no way to bring these people back. People that they deported, that they renditioned without due process, which means that could be any of us. Any U.S. citizen could be skirted away. And then anyone that tries to defend us, we can see witness intimidation from whistleblowers if anyone comes forward from ICE or from the DOJ or from the DHS. We can see law firms being intimidated. This is the scope of what was exposed at the bicameral hearing on Monday. And one of the most alarming things happened at the same day, just after this hearing. U.S. Press Secretary for the White House, Caroline Leavitt, just floats the idea, maybe we'll consider deporting U.S. citizens.
Over the weekend, President Trump said that he would be willing to have U.S. citizens deported to El Salvador with the cooperation of President Bukele. How would that work legally, and how many people would potentially be available for that operation?
So the president has discussed this idea quite a few times publicly. He's also discussed it privately. You're referring to the president's idea for American citizens to potentially be deported. These would be heinous, violent criminals who have broken our nation's laws repeatedly. And these are violent repeat offenders in American streets. The president has said if it's legal, right, if there is a legal pathway to do that, he's not sure. We are not sure if there is. It's an idea that he has simply floated and has discussed very publicly as in the effort of transparency. Reagan.
Well, you heard that. I know that they say only criminals, but even people that are accused or convicted of a crime are afforded due process under constitutional law. Under constitutional law. That is a protected right. Everyone within our borders is afforded due process. And what they're talking about is skirting due process, which goes back to everything that we've covered here today. We are talking about jackbooted, McCarthy era tactics, outrageous executive overreach. And it's happening so fast. We're being bombarded with it so fast that a lot of the mainstream media can't keep up. They're focused on other issues. They'll focus on what is clickbaity, what is sensationalized, what will get traffic to them, rather than the most concerning things happening. That's why it's important for us at Status Coup News to bring you the information that is often left uncovered or left or ignored by the mainstream media. For more coverage like this and to support Status Coup News on the ground coverage, please like, subscribe, and listen. We take zero corporate dollars, no millionaire backers, no ad deals. We are 100% funded by people like you. So please, if you can, donate to Status Coup at statuscoup.com/donate. And like I said, like, subscribe, and tune in again. Thank you so much.